Hi, my name is Jenna. I'm a young mom of 2 under 2, and this is my son's birth story and my Placenta Previa experience. My son Rory is my youngest, and he was born 10 weeks early from complications of my Placenta Previa. So before I move on any further, I did want to put a little disclaimer. If you're not ready to hear someone else's birth trauma or someone's birth experience in general, then go ahead and click out. So with my son's pregnancy, everything seemed great up until the 20-week anatomy scan. They noticed that there was a marginal cord insertion, which just means that the umbilical cord is not smack dab in the middle of the placenta, which really isn't a huge deal. But they also saw that my placenta was low-lying, and they mentioned that this could develop into a complete previa, but they were really hopeful it would move. They told me 9 out of 10 times it moves, and so they put me on pelvic rest. Because I do have a health history of radiation and chemo, my pregnancies are monitored by a high-risk specialist. So after 20 weeks, I get an ultrasound every 4 weeks. So at my 24-week scan, they went ahead and looked at the placenta, and they deemed it a complete previa because the placenta was completely over the cervix. And if you don't know what a placenta previa is, it's just that the placenta lies on top of the cervix, which you wouldn't think is a huge deal, but the placenta is everything that baby needs, and the umbilical cord comes from it, so that cannot deliver first. There's risk of a mom bleeding out, the baby bleeding out. It's just a medical emergency. If there's spotting or anything, the baby has to get out of there by C-section, or it can risk both mom and baby. So we left that appointment a little less hopeful. We started actually making plans in our head for a C-section. I talked to my OB at this point, and she mentioned that if the placenta doesn't move, we will need to deliver around 35 to 37 weeks just to make sure that labor doesn't start before we want it to. So that was a bummer. It was hard to reset what I had imagined for this pregnancy, but we were excited to meet baby, so really, we just wanted him out and safe and healthy. So 4 weeks later, I had a 28-week scan, and that showed that the placenta had not budged. It was actually even more in there. And at that time, the ultrasound tech actually labeled it as I can't say this well, a circumlative placenta, and that just means that the shape is abnormal. It means more than that, I think, but that was what was explained to me, is that it's just an abnormal shape, and they couldn't tell me if that was worrisome or not. But I had a 30-week appointment in 2 weeks that I was going to ask more questions, and we were told that we would set the C-section date. So we were very excited. I took it really easy. I was finishing up my last semester of nursing school, so I made sure that I was always sitting in clinical. All the nurses around me always knew that I was pregnant and I was kind of high risk. But my nursing school was great about it, and I did graduate. Everything was great. It was a little stressful, a little hectic, but it all seemed good. So that was at my 28-week appointment, and then we fast forward 2 weeks, and I remember the day before everything happened, I felt really stressed out because I had a lot of homework and I was starting to get a little behind. And I told my mom about how behind I was, so she asked if she could pick my daughter up, and she was going to spend the day with Nora and get her out of my hair just so I could get a lot done. I remember the whole day I just relaxed, I took a nap, and then we went and picked Nora up from my parents' house, and it was just a very relaxing day. I came home and I had this burst of energy. I got a bunch of assignments done that I needed to. And looking back, I keep trying to figure out if I, did something that made this happen. But it was such an ordinary day. We went to bed around 11. It was a totally normal night. So I woke up at 2 in the morning. It was actually 2 on the dot. I felt like I could feel my heartbeat. I just felt really out of body, and then I realized I was wet. So I nudged my husband, and I'm like, hey, I just wet the bed. I'm gonna go to the bathroom and I'll clean up. And he's like, okay, whatever. Like, he was out of it. And then I stood up, and I remember just feeling like this gush, and I was like, am I seriously still peeing? I felt really woozy. I just felt like something was wrong. So I grabbed my phone and I checked the bed, and there was just blood everywhere, and there was blood coming out of me, and it was just nonstop. And I yelled out to Colton, and I'm like, "Hey Colton, I'm bleeding. The baby's coming. We gotta go." He was up immediately. He threw pants on, grabbed our daughter, and I immediately called my mom because we needed someone for our daughter. So I called my mom and I explained to her that I'm bleeding. You guys need to get here immediately, go to the hospital, just meet us at the hospital. And then my phone died. And I remember just screaming out to Colton that my phone died, my phone died. I threw it down. I was too scared to move because every time I moved, just more blood would just come out. And so he helped me down the stairs. I don't even remember, it's just a blur. I get down to our bathroom and I'm putting on all the clothes that I grabbed, and he runs upstairs to get a phone charger and a few clothes for our daughter because we didn't know what was going to happen. So I call upstairs to Colton, tell him I need your phone, I need to call 911. And at first he's like, "I can drive faster." I was like, "Just give me your phone." So he throws his phone down and I call 911 and I explain what's going on. I didn't know in that moment how else we were going to make this all work because we have our daughter. I'm bleeding out. I'm getting more and more queasy, and I felt like I could just pass out right there. And they tell us an ambulance is coming, stay put. And so instead of that, we run to our car. We live in the city, so our car is in the alley in the back. But on our way out, we set our security system off. So we looked back in the days after just to see the timestamps of everything, and I think it was 2:07 was when we got out the door. I think that's right. So we got out the door. I'm still on the phone with the 911 operator. She's just assuring me that the ambulance is on its way. I don't think I'm gonna get through this. My son is sleeping, but every time I talk, he keeps grunting in his sleep. So anyways, we get in our car, and a lot of this is really blurry now, but we got in the car. Colton plugged in our car charger, gets my phone charging. I'm crying out to this 911 operator. I'm like, they need to get here right now. Colton's like, "I'm gonna go, we're gonna just drive." So he backs out. We go to the top of the street, and the 911 operator is telling us to stay put, stay put. So we get out of the alley into the top of we met the top of the street, and I asked Colton to just pray out loud because I was just I'm like, the baby's not moving, we lost him, you need to pray. And so Colton was praying out loud, and I'm just screaming and crying. Colton's phone, when we got in the car, synced to the Bluetooth, so the 911 operator's hearing all this. And she's like, "Roll down your windows, you should be able to hear the ambulance, roll them down." So we rolled them down, and we're just waiting there, and we're just being quiet, and Eleanor's in the back seat just looking at us, and we were just so scared. And then I remember looking down, my phone turned on from it being charged just for a minute or two, and then we heard the ambulance, and the ambulance came down the street, and my husband ran outside, flagged them down, and then I started to get out. Colton helped me. Colton passed on his phone for me. I get in the ambulance, and Colton's in the car, and I got a little bit of a relief just because we had medical attention, and it was another step closer. And so they started to put IVs in me, which I was in nursing school. I was in my critical care. I knew that if someone's bleeding out, you want 2 IVs. So they get one place, and I'm like, "Can you drive the car? We need to go." And this whole time I keep telling them that I had a Placenta Previa. I told the 911 operator that about 100 times. So they got one IV in, one kept blowing. I was like, "Get it on the road, just keep going." I can't even remember if they got both in or if they did it when we got to triage. And then they kept wanting to get my pants off, which I get it. And they kept wanting me to lift up, and I kept telling them, no, I'm not gonna do that. I can't do that because every time I do, blood gushes out. So they're like, "Is it okay if we cut your pants?" I was like, "Cut my pants, I don't care." So they were able to cut my pants so they could just rip them off the sides. I had called my phone, which Colton had, and so I was trying to talk to him and communicate. He hung up with me, called my mom, called his mom just to make sure everyone's in the loop. My parents were already on their way to the hospital. And then he calls me back just to check, and we had just started to leave. We were just down our street. And I tell him, I'm like, "Please call Bob," which is our pastor. I'm like, because I think this baby's gone and I need more people praying. We need more people praying. He calls him, leaves a voicemail, calls me back, and we're just on the phone. I just keep telling him the baby's gone. The baby's gone. There's no way he's there. He's not moving. I can't stop bleeding. We thought for sure he was gone. The ambulance ride felt like it took forever. But we got into the hospital, I think it was right at 2:40. So this whole thing was maybe 40 minutes. I think I actually had called my mom right before we showed up, and she said that they were waiting outside, waiting to see Colton's car so that he could run in and that they would handle it. So I knew I could stop worrying about that, and so I was just more worried about Colton getting up to triage and being there when they told me the news that he was gone, because in my head, like, Rory was gone. So I just wanted to make sure Colton would be there, because I knew, like, hearing it would just be devastating. So they hurry up and get me up to triage. I was in there for maybe 5 minutes alone, and I'm just sobbing. They're getting everything together, getting my chart pulled up, and they come in with the ultrasound machine, and I remember just like flinching, because I'm like, Colton's not here. I don't want to hear this. Colton's not here. And then they said, Dad's here, and Colton comes in. A lot of this, I remember closing my eyes and just hearing everything around me. So then we're in there, they put the ultrasound on me, and they immediately get a heartbeat, like immediate. And I remember being like, he's there? And they're like, yeah, baby's okay, baby's there. And I just, like, the relief I got in that moment, like, it didn't matter that I was 30 weeks. It didn't matter that I was about to get, like, major surgery and he was going to be taken away from me. Like, that, none of that mattered, because he was alive. I think at that point, Colton let our parents know that baby was alive and that he was coming. So by this point, it's around 3 a.m. We had only been in triage for about 20 minutes. They had me monitored. They saw that I was having slight contractions. They needed to get magnesium in me. They needed to bolus some fluids before the anesthetic. They were able to give me the steroid shot that helps develop the baby's lungs. They were also able to see my chart that I had requested for an IUD placement with my C-section. So real fast, one of the nurses was like, hey, do you still want the IUD? And I was like, yes, like, if you're going in there, if all this is happening, please place that thing. So she ran over and I was able to consent it as I was being wheeled into the OR. They prepped Colton, and then I went to the OR, and it felt like I was there for just an eternity. The anesthesiologist was with another patient, so I think we waited for maybe 20-30 minutes for him. And I was still just kind of oozing blood, but I had the monitor. I knew the baby was safe, and so at that point, that's all that mattered. Everyone in the OR was so sweet. Everyone was like being lighthearted, and it was a really nice atmosphere. And then one of the delivering doctors came in, and she just so happened to be the doctor that was on call with my daughter's birth. So she delivered my daughter, and then she also delivered my son. And she remembered me because it had only been a year and 2 months. And so seeing her, she grabbed my hands, she told me everything was gonna be okay and they were gonna get the baby. So the anesthesiologist finally came in, they placed the spinal, they laid me down, Colton came in, and it was baby time. The C-section was the most bizarre sensation. I hated it, but Colton was right there with me the whole time. And then they got really close to the baby and they said, oh, he's gonna be born at 4 o'clock, and it was like 3:59, 3:58 or something like that. And then 4 o'clock on the dot, they pull him out, and he was crying, he was feisty. It was like the most beautiful sound. The doctors were even like, he's a big boy, because they expected this tiny 30-weeker, and he was actually a pound bigger than what they were expecting. So he came out fighting, and they brought him to the like drop cloth, and I got to see him. And then they took him over and cleaned him off. They got oxygen on him. They placed him in his isolette, and they're stitching me up. I'm just looking over at a TV screen that they have that has a camera overhead so that the mom can watch what's going on. So I watched them clean him up, And then I got to see him from his isolette as I was on the OR table, and I kept telling Colton to go with him. So Colton went with baby Rory. At the time we didn't have a name actually. He was born without a name. First day or so he didn't have a name. So he went off with the baby, and I was alone in the OR for about an hour while they stitched me up. So that hour without the baby is one of the most isolating times I've ever been in. You know, after my daughter, I love that golden hour and holding her and having that euphoria. So I was alone in there, and the doctor that had delivered my daughter came over and kissed my forehead because I was just sobbing. It got very somber in there for sure. But yeah, he was born 3 pounds, 14 ounces, 16 inches long. I was able to meet him right around 6 hours after. Colton was able to come back to me after Rory got settled in his NICU room. He came to me and showed me all these videos that he had taken and just told me how healthy he was. And then he gave me a kiss and went back, and he slept in Rory's room until I was able to text him that I was ready to come meet him, and Colton came and got me, and he wheeled me to go see our son. That's all I got. If you have any more Placenta Previa questions, or if you want me to share our NICU journey, then I would love to. That's all I got.